What causes a man at the absolute peak of his power to simply walk away? In the spring of 2026, the world of country music looks different than it did just a few years ago. And at the center of that change is a man who spent 23 seasons in a spinning red chair. We often see the neon lights and the sold-out stadiums, but we rarely see the quiet moments on an Oklahoma ranch where a superstar reconciles with the passage of time. Today, we're looking past the sexiest man alive titles and the chart-topping hits to find the real story of Blake Shelton. A journey of loss, a surprising retreat, and a transformation that proves some of the most important victories happen when the cameras stop rolling. Before the world knew him as a country music superstar, Blake Shelton was just a boy growing up in the small town of Ada, Oklahoma. Life in Ada was simple, centered around family, hard work, and the sounds of the radio. Blake's father sold used cars, and his mother ran a beauty shop. From an early age, Blake was drawn to music, but it wasn't just a hobby. It was a sanctuary. He spent hours listening to the storytelling of country legends, finding a sense of peace in the lyrics that spoke of heartache and home. However, the foundation of his world was shaken when he was just 14 years old. His older brother, Richie, was killed in a tragic car accident. This was the first major turning point in Blake's life. Grief is a heavy burden for anyone, but for a teenager in a small town, it can feel like a mountain. This loss instilled in him a deep sense of the fragility of life. It made him realize that time is not something to be taken for granted. This emotional weight stayed with him as he picked up his guitar and began to write his own stories. At 17, Blake made a bold decision that would change his life forever. 2 weeks after graduating high school, he packed his bags and moved to Nashville. He didn't have a record deal or a place to stay. He only had his songs and a dream. But Nashville is a city built on broken dreams, and Blake soon found that the road to success was paved with rejection. He spent years working odd jobs, painting houses, and performing in empty bars. He was a young man searching for a sense of belonging in a city that wasn't quite ready for him yet. He often felt the pressure to change his style or his voice to fit the Nashville mold, but something inside him resisted. He wanted to honor the red dirt roots of Oklahoma and the memory of his brother. The stakes were high. If he didn't make it soon, he would have to go back to Ada and face the reality of a life he had tried so hard to expand. He poured his frustration and his hope into a song called Austin. It was a simple story about a woman leaving a message on an answering machine, but it carried the emotional depth Blake had been cultivating since he was a boy. He felt that this song was his last real shot at the life he wanted. But just as Austin finally reached the top of the charts and his dream seemed within reach, a sudden corporate shift at his record label threatened to delete his debut album entirely. Would his first hit also be his last? Blake survived the early industry hurdles, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened in 2011. When he accepted a role as a coach on a new reality show called The Voice, he wasn't just a country singer anymore. He became a global television icon. Suddenly, Blake was in the living rooms of millions of people every week. His quick wit and friendly rivalry with Adam Levine made him a fan favorite. On the surface, he was living the ultimate dream. He was winning seasons, selling out arenas, and was even named the sexiest man alive. But behind the laughter and the spinning red chair, a psychological toll was building. This period of his life became what many call the golden cage. Success at this level comes with a high price, the total loss of privacy. Every move Blake made was scrutinized by the media. During his time on the show, he navigated 2 very public divorces. Imagine trying to process the end of a marriage while millions of people are watching you on live TV, waiting for you to crack a joke or show a sign of weakness. The emotional stakes were incredibly high, and Blake often felt he had to wear a mask of the happy-go-lucky country guy, even when he was hurting inside. The schedule was also grueling. For over a decade, Blake was trapped in a cycle of filming, touring, and promoting. The red dirt of Oklahoma, which had always been his source of strength, was now thousands of miles away. He was achieving everything he thought he wanted, yet he felt increasingly disconnected from his own identity. He started to feel like a character in a script rather than a man living a life. Even after finding new love and happiness with Gwen Stefani, The pressure of the spotlight didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. The golden cage wasn't just about the fame. It was about the fear of stopping. In the entertainment industry, there is a constant fear that if you step away, the world will move on without you. Blake was caught between the prestige of his position and a growing hunger for a simpler existence. He began to wonder if the man who started out in Ada would even recognize the man sitting in the red chair. He was successful, wealthy, and famous, but he was also exhausted. The spark that had driven him to Nashville was being smothered by the very industry he had conquered. He realized he was missing out on the milestones of his stepsons' lives and the quiet seasons of the land he loved. As the seasons racked up and the pressure reached a breaking point, Blake made a decision that shocked his fans and his fellow coaches alike. He decided to walk away from it all. But would the silence be more frightening than the noise? In May 2023, Blake Shelton walked off the set of The Voice for the last time. He didn't head to a movie set or jump into a world tour. Instead, he went home to Oklahoma. This began what he now calls his silent era. For 18 months, Blake effectively disappeared from the mainstream. He traded his designer suits for worn-out overalls and his private jets for a tractor. This chapter of his life was about rediscovery. When the cameras stop rolling and the applause dies down, a person is forced to confront who they are without the titles. For Blake, this was a period of intense psychological reflection. At first, the transition was jarring. He had spent 20 years being told where to go and what to say. Now, the only person he had to answer to was himself and the land. He spent his days clearing brush, planting crops, and simply being present for his family. He was no longer Blake Shelton the brand. He was a stepfather, a husband, and a neighbor. The fallout of this decision was immediate in the music industry. Insiders whispered that he was losing his relevance. In a world that moves at the speed of social media, being gone for a year can feel like an eternity. But Blake wasn't worried about his chart position. He was busy dealing with the vulnerability of being unplugged. He had to face the burnout he had ignored for years. He realized that for a long time, he had been running on fumes, fueled only by the momentum of his career. This 18-month silence allowed him to heal from the decades of high-stress living. He learned that his value wasn't tied to how many people watched him on Tuesday nights. The growth he experienced was quiet but profound. He found joy in the mundane, watching a sunset without feeling the need to photograph it for a promotion, or writing a song that he knew would never be a radio hit. He began to write music again, but this time the songs were different. They weren't about partying in the woods. They were about the passage of time, the beauty of the land, and the peace he had finally found. He was reclaiming his soul from the machinery of celebrity. Just as he seemed settled in his new life of solitude, a surprise phone call from an old friend arrived. It was an offer to return to the stage, but not in the way anyone expected. Was he ready to step back into the light, or had he grown too fond of the shadows? Today, at 59, Blake Shelton looks different. If you see him now, you might see a man who has finally grown comfortable in his own skin. He has returned to the public eye, but on his own terms. He isn't chasing the next big trend or trying to compete with singers half his age. Instead, he has focused on legacy. He recently launched a new residency in Las Vegas, but it's not a flashy pop show. It's a tribute to the history of country music. The transformation in Blake is most visible in how he spends his time. He has become a mentor to the next generation, not through a TV show, but through his own production company. He is working on a deeply personal documentary about his musical hero, Keith Whitley, a project he says he never would have had the emotional bandwidth to finish during his Voice years. This is the version of Blake Shelton that people find so moving today, the man who realized that his greatest hit wasn't a song on the Billboard charts, but the life he built when he finally stopped running. When you see him with his family now, there is a sense of calm that wasn't there before. He has navigated the complexities of fame and come out the other side with his values intact. He still loves to perform, but he no longer needs the validation of the spotlight to feel whole. He has shown the world that growing up doesn't have to mean fading away. It can mean becoming more of who you were always meant to be. His journey from the boy in Ada to the man on the ranch is a reminder to all of us. tells us that it's okay to step back. It's okay to change your mind about what success looks like. Blake's story is a testament to the power of returning to your roots. He has faced loss, intense public pressure, and the fear of irrelevance, and he has emerged as a man who is truly at peace. As we look at him today, we don't see a fading star. We see a man who has successfully reclaimed his life. He has proven that the most important journey isn't the one that takes you to the top of the mountain, but the one that leads you back home. As Blake looks out over his Oklahoma ranch today, we are left with a question for ourselves. In a world that tells us to always do more and be more, what would happen if we had the courage to stop? What version of yourself would you find if you finally turned off the noise and listened to the silence? Maybe, like Blake, you'd find that the person you were always looking for was there all along, just waiting for the cameras to stop rolling.